Hey folks, I'm Mike. Do you hate ads? I hate ads. You know what I like? Patreon.com/Inkdependence. It keeps this blog ad-free. Hello folks and welcome to Inkdependence.com. Today we're going to look at some Franklin-Christoph paper. In the past we've looked at this one. This is from their Vagabond notebooks. And this is a bamboo paper, which I've liked quite a lot. But this is not their normal paper, and in fact you only really find this in the pocket notebooks and in the Vagabonds. So their more normal paper is what you find in these Firmaflex journals. And they have one that flips over the top. I think it's just called pads or something like that. These Firmaflex journals are very nice. They have this sort of leathery, although not leather cover. The paper inside is a little bit off-white. All of their paper is a little bit off-white. It has a slightly maroonish or like mauve kind of cast to it. But it's all this is all sugarcane paper. The thing about these journals is, as you can see, I haven't started this one, even though I've had it for like a year or something, is that I am precious about journals and I don't want to mess them up. And I feel like if I can't tear pages out, I guess I could just tear them out, but it would look a mess. But I feel like if I can't neatly tear pages out, then I'm going to mess up the journal, and it kind of inhibits me from starting a journal. I know that's a silly attitude to have, and yet it is the one that I have. So, a good answer for that for me is to have paper where you can tear it out of the journal, or, and this is their newest thing, you can have loose leaf paper. This is a while after it came out. I'm like, what? You have loose leaf? Get me that. So Audrey got me some. We paid for this stuff from Franklin-Christoph. This is the same sugarcane paper that they have in the Firmaflex journal. And it's the same size actually as in the Firmaflex journal. They're both A5s. This just has a little bit of binding around it. It doesn't have the clipped corners. It has the sort of traditional squared off corners. It has a heavy line of rule at the top, and it has a heavy line of rule at the bottom, with a little tiny Franklin-Christoph symbol with the 4 diamonds down at the bottom. And that's the only branding you're going to find on here. There's no big watermark or anything in the middle to distract. This is great paper for taking notes on. I usually have this in my drawer right here by my desk. It's great for writing letters because, well, it's just going to be, as you can see, it's going to be really good paper. In fact, let's look at one that I have written all over, and that's this one. So this has all your kind of details about the paper. Franklin-Christoph loose leaf. This is sugarcane extract paper. It is 90 grams per square meter, which is a fairly thick paper, fairly heavy-ish paper, but it's not too thick to fold or whatever. It's just nicely dense. It is pH neutral and acid free, so like archival kind of stuff will work on here, or you can use it for archives. It's not going to eat itself or what have you. It gets 50 sheets per pack, and these are 8mm ruled. I always get the ruled because it comes in basically ruled in blank, and I like the structure of a rule, and 8mm is a good rule. I usually go for like, I don't know, 7-ish when I'm making my own, like with blank slate paper or whatever, but this 8mm is nice. And it's good with these big broad nibs that I was using. So if you want to use a big nib, this is still a good size for you. They sell this in A4 and A5. This is A5. A4 is closer to letter size in the US, although it's a little bit different. And it comes in blank, ruled, or stationary in the A4 size, which is, well, it's ruled, but it's only ruled on one side. I don't really know why that's a thing, but it is. So stationary ruled on one side. The regular ruled stuff is ruled on both sides, and that makes more sense to me. You can use the back of this. In fact, since I've already spoiled the surprise, you can use the whole back of this, and that's true with everything I tried it with, including pretty much Sharpie. So let's zoom in a little bit here and look at some detail work on these. Okay, now that we're zoomed in just a little bit, you can see the detail here. There is no feathering or any of that nonsense. Feathering is usually a factor of the paper as well as the ink, maybe more the paper than anything else, and you don't really have that here at all. And I've written with some pretty big nibs. So the nib that I wrote all this stuff with, these are the details about this paper, was this one right here, which is a Grafton Faber-Castell broad. It's in this pen. It's a fairly big, broad nib, a little bit stubby, fairly wet as well, and this is with Monteverde's blue-black, which is a good solid blue-black, very dark blue-black, fairly wet writer, and no bleeding, feathering, spreading, none of that. You can totally use the back of this page. In fact, there's no ghosting at all either. Let me get the rest of these off from underneath it. Look at that, nothing there. So good stuff with the broad. Again, I used a double broad nib here for the Monteverde Moonstone and this pilot nib. I have this is deceptive. This is not the right color for this ink. This is Robert Oster's Pacific Ocean Teal. If you leave it in a pen for a few months and don't really use it all that much, I haven't used this pen in probably a month or so. I just kind of forgot that it was inked, honestly. So we'll look at this, but this did give us a lot of sheen. This is a medium Bach nib. This is Colorverse Cat, which is a shimmery ink and a big Levenger broad nib. This is a fine nib for Pelican, which means it's like a medium for anybody else, and also wet like a fire hose. And this is Diamine Skull and Roses. Some papers will not really show off the properties of your ink. This one does a good job of that. It'll show your shading, as we see here in the Moonstone. It'll also show your sheen as we get from the watch these two lines. As they change color to like sort of an iridescent kind of purpley color. That's called sheen, and it pops up on this paper really well. The dry time is not particularly long, even with these wet inks that are generally very saturated. I'm not getting any like rub off either, which is nice. It seems to have dried very well. And then with the Levenger broad here with Colorverse Cat, it has some shimmer. See a little bit of shimmer in there as I move it in the light, I think. Although this is a fairly diffuse light, so you're not getting a whole lot of that stuff, but some. Down here at the normal-ish pens, I used a big variety of normal-ish pens. This is all High-Tech C Coletto, which is a multi-pen. These are all gels, so those are all gel inks, High-Tech C inks. Then underneath that, I use the Jelly Roll, which is a big, thick, it's a very thick ink, and it takes a while to dry, but it seems like it dried pretty quickly on here. I've got the Pentel Intergel 1.0, which is another big gel, the 0.7, which is a more reasonable gel. These are all pretty small. I forget what these are, like maybe 0.5 or something like that millimeters. Papermate Liquid Flare, which is like a liquid direct ink pen, so you've got a I don't know, a plastic bit on the end of the pen that you get the ink from. It's a weirdo thing, but I like it quite a lot. It does tend to bleed, though, if you use crappy paper. That's because it puts down a lot of ink. The Papermate Inkjoy gel, which is a great gel pen. The Parker Jotter ballpoint, the Zebra Sarai ballpoint, which I believe is an emulsion ink on that one. And then the Caran d'Ache 849, which is another ballpoint. So ballpoint works just fine. Sharpie works really well, and in fact, Sharpie is the only thing that even came close to coming through this page, and it only barely did. Like, if you had to, you could use both sides of this paper with a Sharpie. That's not one of these super fines. It's just a regular standard Sharpie pen. Sharpie marker, I should say, not the pen. This is HB and B pencil. Look, I put pencil on here for you. Also, Stabilo pen 68, which is like a fiber tip pen. The Staedtler pigment liner, which I'm not a huge fan of. It's way too pale, but no problems there either. And then this is some highlighter for you. This is a Preppy highlighter. Preppy makes highlighters, which I've actually almost run through. So none of that stuff came through. Sometimes with highlighters, you get a little bit of like feathering or whatever, and you can definitely get bleed with highlighters. Nothing on this paper. So the bottom line on this Franklin-Christoph loose leaf paper is that it's really quite good. The only problem I have with it is that it's not quite white. So let's look at it next to a whole bunch of other papers and compare their color, the color of the paper. All right, so there's our Franklin-Christoph paper. Let's put it next to, this is the bamboo paper that they use, and you can see they're the same color. There's no difference here that's discernible, and that's not surprising. They're both Franklin-Christoph papers, and they tend to use the same color there. This is a rhodia, a piece of rhodia, and you can immediately, I think, see the difference between the Franklin-Christoph slightly mauvish tint, and this is why I don't use it for ink reviews. Otherwise, I would use this for all kinds of stuff. But rhodia is a pure bright white with no surprises there. This is Mariman's Mnemosyne paper, and it's a little bit like cream colored. I don't use this for a whole lot of pen reviews, or rather ink reviews either, because it's not quite white. It's more of a cream, but you can see the difference between the slight mauve and the cream here. This is a Nocco dot dash notebook, which is much closer to white with these nice blue dots and dashes, this nice grid. Let's get a little closer. Yeah, that's better. Now I can see the grids on my screen. So there you go. This is much more like white than this one. Next is Clairefontaine. This is just a regular old Clairefontaine book. And as you can see, Clairefontaine is a nice pure white as well. This is the Life Cap'n Note. which is a very nice paper, but it's also very yellow. So this is yellow, and this is kind of that maroonish cast to it. But this is a cool paper, and I actually like the way it looks with a lot of inks on it, but it doesn't give you sort of the pure white that a lot of other papers will, and so that's why I don't really use it for reviews or anything. This is Midori Cotton, MD Cotton, which is closer to white, but also it's a little bit creamy. In fact, it makes this one look white next to it, but this is kind of a cream instead of a white. And this, by the way, is that stationary thing that I was talking about, where it's lined on one side and totally blank on the other. It's kind of weird. Let's see. Here is a Fabriano. Fabriano makes very nice notebooks. This is Eco-Qua. It's got a little bit of a tooth to it, but I like the paper quite a lot. It's not exactly bright white, but it is white, as you can see compared here. It's a little bit on the, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a an ivory or something going on with Fabriano. This is a Fool's University notebook, which is kind of cool. I've only just started using this one a little bit. Have I? I think I started using it. No, I really haven't, actually. I just kind of did some little tests in it. But it's fairly white. It's maybe a little bit on the ivory side as well. But you know, gives you that comparison. Here are a couple of different Tomoe River ones. This one is from Kernel Leather Goods. They sell these with their notebook covers. This is a very nice white Tomoe River. You can definitely see the difference there between these two. And then this one is, I actually forget where I even got this one now that I'm thinking about it. I have no real memory of where this one came from. It might be Nakabayashi or something like that. Anyway, it's Tomoe River paper, but it's a slightly different color, and it's got the little dots in it and that kind of thing. So here's your different Tomoe Rivers against the Franklin-Christoph loose leaf. And lastly, but not leastly, this is the Logical Prime. Actually, this is just the Logical notebook, not the Prime. The Prime's a little bit different. Logical has like a little bit of a green cast to it, which is kind of interesting, and I like the way it makes the writing pop. I've been using a smaller Logical for some heavy note-taking recently, and I like the color, but it's got a little bit of a green cast to it almost, as compared to the maroonish stuff here, and the sort of pure white that you get from this Tomoe River. There you go. There's three of them right there. You can see the differences in cast. All right, so this has been Franklin-Christoph's loose leaf paper, which is definitely, like, it's an easy recommend for me. In fact, I bought some for relatives for their Christmas, like, stockings or whatever. It's an early Christmas gift sort of thing, so that they have something to write all the rest of their gifts down on, so they can use that paper then to write thank you notes to people who sent them things. So this is a paper that not only do I use, but I give it as gifts to other people because I think it's great. So check out this Franklin-Christoph loose leaf. You can find this on franklinchristoph.com, and it's pretty cheap at $5.50 to $7.50 depending on the size. $5.50 for the A4s, and or rather for the A5s, and then $7.50 for the A4s. And that's 50 sheets. That's quite a lot to get you started. This stuff is great. You can use both sides. Highly recommend. I'll see y'all later. Peace out.